weekly theme, July 13th until July 19th, living with intention. Okay, so last week we found our voice. Now it's time to make intentional choices that align with our values. This week is about making choices that align with the life you are creating. Every yes, every no, every conversation, every purchase, every goal, and every moment deserves intention. Growth doesn't happen by accident, it happens on purpose. Today is July 13th. This is episode number 52. And our title today is Living with Intention, Choosing the Life You Really Want. Okay? So, welcome to Cup of Cocoa and Chat. I am Princess, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're relaxing at home, commuting, at work, running errands, or just listening in your car, thank you for inviting me into your day. If you can, get cozy with your favorite beverage. Of course, you already know mine is a nice cup of hot or cold cocoa. Here at Cup of Cocoa and Chat, we believe some of life's best lessons happen one conversation at a time. This is a place where we slow down, reflect, grow, and simply have real conversations about life. So let's start today's Cocoa conversation. Okay? Our Cocoa conversation is living with intention, choosing the life you really want. So, over the past couple of weeks, we've been on a journey together, right? First, we learned to become rooted and rising, right? Grounded in who we are while continuing to grow. Then we discovered our quiet strength, finding our voice without losing ourselves, right? Now it's time to live what we've learned, right? Because there's no need of having all these conversations if we're not acting on our conversations, right? Because knowing who you are is only the beginning, right? Finding your voice is only the beginning. The next step is choosing to live intentionally every single day. And that's where we are now, right? We are choosing to live intentionally. So today, let's talk about making choices that align with our values, our purpose, and the life we truly want to create. Okay? So, let's pour our first cup of cocoa and start today's conversation. Now, what does intentional living really mean? Okay? Because when you hear the words living with intention, what comes to your mind? What comes to your mind? For me, intentional living isn't about having a perfect plan. It's about having every hour of your day scheduled. It isn't about having every hour of your day scheduled or trying to keep up with someone else's definition of success, right? It's all about making choices that reflect who you are and what truly matters to you, right? So just take a moment and ask yourself, am I living the life that's meaningful to me or the life I feel other people expect me to live, right? Sometimes society tells us what success should look like, where we should be by a certain age, what we should already own, how busy we should be, or even what our dreams should look like. But intentional living asks a different question, right? The question that is asked is, what kind of life do I actually want? Okay? And maybe that means taking a look at your environment, right? Look around. Is your home supporting your peace? Does your schedule leave room to breathe? Is it time to declutter your space? Or maybe declutter your calendar, right? Sometimes the clutter isn't in our closets. Sometimes it's on our to-do list. So ask yourself these three questions. What can I take off my plate? What am I saying yes to that should really be a no? And are my daily actions aligned with my core values? Because I think some of us forget that the word no can be a sentence. No, period. Not no with an excuse following it, or not no with an explanation following it. It can just be no. Okay? Now, as children, many of us were taught values like kindness, honesty, respect, faith, family, and hard work. Those lessons can still guide us today. So I'm not saying throw those values out the window because they can still guide us. The question is whether we are making choices that honor those values, or are we simply reacting to whatever life throws our way? So don't throw those values out the window, but let's honor those values by the choices that we make daily. Because living intentionally means living on purpose instead of living on autopilot. So, as I was preparing for today's conversation, I realized I've been practicing intentional living myself, right? Because I can not come out here and have a conversation with you about living intentionally if I myself am not living intentionally, right? So, over the past few months, I've made some changes that may seem small on the surface, may seem small to some, but they were rewarding for me, although they were small, right? They made a big difference in how I feel. I refreshed my bedroom to create a space that feels peaceful instead of overwhelming. Because I had shoe boxes with my sneakers and with my shoes in them. I had, because I have a small house. So I don't have a lot of storage. So I have to get creative in how I store things. And I looked around one day and it was completely overwhelming, right? How can I live more peacefully? Was my question to myself, right? So, what better way was to refresh my bedroom, right? I bought a new ceiling fan. I had a shelf that I had all my shoes on, but I had shoe boxes. I had shoe boxes inserted on the shelves. So I got rid of those. I purchased clear shoe boxes that gave my room more of the aesthetic that I was looking for, right? I've been focusing on improving my health. You know, I've been planning my content in advance so I can spend more time enjoying life and touching more grass, right? In other words, I've been spending more time away from my screens and actually enjoying life for once. I started choosing quality over quantity in the things I create and even intentionally preparing for my upcoming cruise. I mean, I'm so excited. I've never been on a cruise. I was always afraid, right? You know? So I'm like, okay, I got to do it. At one time, I was afraid to fly. Now I love to fly. Get you there quicker. So now I'm going to experience this thing called cruising. So we'll see how that goes, right? So I say all that to say none of these decisions that I've made recently happened overnight. They were made one choice at a time. And that's what intentional living looks like. It's not about making one huge life changing decision, it's about making daily choices that align with the life you're trying to build. So today, I want to leave you with this question. And hopefully, by the end of our conversation, you can answer this question truthfully, with honesty. What is one intentional choice you can make this week that your future self will thank you for later? What is one intentional choice you can make this week that your future self will thank you for later? All right, so we've gone over what does intentional living really mean, right? So let's sip on some cocoa and let's talk about something that we often get confused. Because now, I'm sure many of you have thought that being busy and being purposeful were the same thing. Being busy and being purposeful were the same thing. I know a lot of you thought that because I know I did, right? In fact, I've talked about this in a previous episode because I realized something about myself. I was checking things off my to-do list every day, staying busy from morning until night, and yet I wasn't getting any closer to the goals that really mattered to me. Right? So we need to know the difference between being busy and being purposeful. If we are looking ahead and being intentional or living intentional, building that life for ourselves, right? Because now it's time to start living intentionally, right? I was completing tasks but I wasn't always making progress. You know, that's when I start to realize there's a difference between movement and momentum. Because being busy is filling your day with activities, but being purposeful is filling your day with priorities, right? So we have to look at the difference between being busy and being purposeful, because you want to be purposeful. You don't just want to be busy and not reaching your goals. You want to live intentionally. Now, busy will ask you, what else can I get done today? But purpose asks, what deserves my time today? Now, for me, once I started living with intention, everything began to change for me. Instead of trying to do everything, I focus on doing the right things. I learned that small, consistent actions lead to meaningful results, right? That meant planning my podcast content ahead of time instead of rushing every week, right? It meant creating systems that gave me more freedom to do the things that I want to do. It meant protecting my peace instead of chasing perfection. Now, here's the truth. You can full your calendar. You can have a full calendar and still feel unfulfilled. Every box in that calendar can have a entry, but you still feel unfulfilled. That's because we're too busy being busy and not being purposeful. Or here's another one. You can have a simple day filled with purposeful choices and end it feeling accomplished. That sounds better to me, right? I would rather have a simple day filled with purposeful choices and feel accomplished at the end than to have a calendar filled with bogus things to keep me busy but still feel unfulfilled. Right? Because being purposeful doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it means doing less, but doing what matters most. So let me ask you, are you filling your days with activity, or are you filling them with purpose? That's something to think about. You know those people that walk around on the job looking busy, but they're not busy? Just being performative for no darn reason at all, instead of being purposeful. Now, I don't want you just to make decisions, right? And not be intentional, right? But I also don't want you just drifting through life like that person in that last example, walking around just being performative, right? Because once you discover the difference between being busy and being purposeful, something begins to change, right? So you'll feel that change as I did, right? Your decision making becomes more intentional. Okay? You are no longer drifting through life hoping things will work out, right? You're making thoughtful choices that support the life you're trying to build. So instead of reacting to every opportunity, every distraction, and every request that comes your way, you begin to pause and ask yourself, does this align with my goals? Does this align with my values? Is this moving me forward or simply keeping me busy? Those simple questions can change everything. Everything. When your choices are intentional, your actions become more focused, your priorities become clearer, and before you know it, you're building momentum instead of constantly starting over. Because not every decision will be perfect, but hey, that's okay, right? Because living intentionally isn't about making perfect decisions, it's about making thoughtful ones. The more intentional your choices become, the more cohesive your life begins to feel. That your time has purpose, your energy has direction, your goals become more attainable because every small decision is helping move you closer to them. So instead of asking what's next, you start asking what's next that's aligned with the life I want to create. And that's the difference between drifting through life and living it with intention. hmm Now, let's talk about protecting your time, peace, and energy. Okay? I want to be transparent right here. My regular listeners already know that I'm a strong believer in protecting your peace. I talk about that a lot. So if you've been with me for a while, you've probably heard me say it more than once. But today, I want to take it a step further. When you become aware of what's important to you, when you understand the difference between being busy and being purposeful, and when you begin making intentional decisions, you naturally start protecting your peace, your time, and your energy. And I want every one of us to get to that place. Okay? Because the truth is, there will always be people, places, and situations, and even habits that compete for our attention. Some will encourage us, but others will quietly rob us of our time. They will they will disturb our peace, trying to destroy it, right? And they will drain our energy if we let them. So today I want us to pause for just a moment because our time is precious, our peace is precious, our energy is precious. These are some of the greatest gifts we've been given, and they're too valuable to give away carelessly. But now, that doesn't mean we stop loving people or helping others. It simply means we become better stewards of what we've been entrusted with, which is time, peace, and energy. Precious commodity. Precious commodities. Okay? So when distraction shows up, and they will, I want you to remember everything we talked about today. Just be aware, be purposeful, and be intentional. Is this worthy of my time? Will this protect my peace? Is this worth my energy? Sometimes the most powerful decisions you can make is saying no to what distracts you so you can continue saying yes to the life you're intentionally creating. Because protecting your time, your peace, and your energy, it isn't a selfish act. It's one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and for the people who receive the very best version of you. Okay? So, moving right along, building daily habits that match your goals. Because remember, it's all about living intentionally. Okay? Okay. So I know I can go on and on about protecting our time, our peace, and our energy, especially our peace, right? But let's move on to something else I believe just as strongly. We have to build daily habits that support the life we're trying to create. Over the years, we've talked about habits quite a bit here on Cup of Cocoa and Chat. We've discussed identifying unhealthy habits, replacing them with healthier ones, and understanding that our habits often shape our future more than our intentions does, right? So our intentions and understanding our habits. So they work hand in hand, right? Because those old habits have a way of creeping back into our lives from time to time, right? And that's okay because the goal isn't perfection, the goal is progress. So the important thing is recognizing when those habits no longer serve us and making the choice just to get back on track. Get back on track. It's your life. You're the one that's living it, but you just want to live it intentionally. So when that bad habit creeps in, recognize that bad habit, make a choice to get back on track. Now, I truly believe that once you identify your goals, you have to build habits that support those goals, right? So if your goal is better health, your daily habits should reflect that. If your goal is a stronger relationship, your daily habits have to reflect that. If your goal is financial freedom, your daily habits have your daily habits should reflect that, right? If your goal is peace of mind, your daily habits should reflect that too. So, you can expect your life to change. You can't expect your life to change if your habits never do. So, we need to start identifying those bad habits that we have and make better choices so that we can live intentionally. Because every small habit is casting a vote for the person you are becoming. And you don't have to make 10 changes today, right? That's another thing that I am a believer of. You can start one healthy choice at a time, one better routine, one intentional habit, then repeat it tomorrow, right? If it takes a week, it takes a week. If it takes a month, it takes a month. Then work on another healthy choice, another better routine, and another one intentional habit. And just keep repeating them. Because intentional living isn't built on occasional big moments. It's built on the small, consistent choices we make every single day. Those choices that we make every single day become habits. And those habits become our lifestyle. And that lifestyle becomes our legacy. All right? Now, I want you to give yourself permission to change direction. Okay? Give yourself permission to change directions. Because now we've talked about identifying our purpose, making intentional decisions, protecting our time, peace, and energy, and building habits that support the life we want. But here's something we don't talk about enough. Sometimes living intentionally means giving yourself permission to change direction. And I've talked about pivoting. Sometimes we got to pivot, right? Because just because you've always done something one way doesn't mean you have to keep doing it that way. Because growth requires movement. Sometimes that movement is taking a step forward. And sometimes it's taking a different path altogether. And there comes a point where we have to stop overthinking and start putting our intentions into action. Because action creates momentum, momentum creates progress, and progress creates confidence. So you don't have to wait until everything is perfect before you begin. You don't have to have every answer before you take the first step. Sometimes all you need is the courage to say, I'm ready for something different. I've had it. I've had to do that in my own life. Okay? I've given myself permission to reinvent myself, to try new things, to embrace new opportunities, and to trust that it's never too late to grow. And if I can do it, so can you. Right? So can you. So let me ask you this. What have you been putting off because you're waiting for the perfect time? What dream have you put off? What conversation have you put off? What first step have you put off? Can you just give yourself permission to begin this week? Because remember, living intentionally isn't about standing still. You got to move, right? It's about having the courage to move in the direction of the life you've been dreaming about. Okay? So building the habits, right? And then giving yourself permission to change direction if you need to. Now, we want to get to a place where we're ending each day with purpose instead of exhaustion. Okay? So let me leave you with one final thought. Have you ever completed everything on your to-do list, only to sit down at the end of the day and ask yourself, what did I really accomplish? You're looking around at your environment, whether it's in your home, at work, and you've did all this stuff all day long. And then you're sitting there wondering, what did you accomplish? You know, you were busy all day. You were moving all day. You were tired all day. Yet somehow, the one thing that really needed your attention never got done. I know this has happened to a lot of you. I know because I've been there. It's happened to me, and I'm sure it has happened to you too. That's one of the biggest difference between being busy and living intentionally. Because at the end of an intentional day, you may still be tired, but it's a different kind of tired. It's the satisfaction of knowing your energy was spent on what mattered most. What mattered most, right? So it's knowing you made progress instead of simply staying occupied. So you may have been busy, but it was intentional. You got everything done, and you have that satisfaction of knowing that you spent your time, your energy, and your peace on something that mattered most. Now, I've learned that when I plan with intention, I don't end my day feeling scattered. I end my day feeling fulfilled because I know I invested my time in the things that truly moved my life forward. So tonight, before you go to bed, don't just ask yourself, what did I get done today? Ask yourself, did I spend my time on what mattered most? Did my choices reflect the life I'm trying to build? Did I live today with intention? And if the answer is yes, then today was a success. Not because you did everything, but because you did what mattered. And sometimes that's more than enough, right? That's more than enough because you're ending your day with purpose instead of exhaustion. Okay? So, my friend, as we close today's Cocoa conversation, let's remember what we've learned together. We now know what matters. We will focus on what matters, right? We will continue to choose what matters. We will protect what matters. We will build habits around what matters. We will have the courage to change when it matters. And most of all, we will end each day with purpose because that is what truly matters. So living intentionally isn't about living a perfect life. It's about living a purposeful one. Okay? So if today's conversation encouraged you, inspired you, or made you stop and think, I ask that you share it with someone who could benefit from it. You never know who needs this reminder today. And don't forget to come back next Monday for another Cocoa conversation where we will continue growing together, one intentional conversation at a time. Until then, peace and blessings. I love you and I mean it. So let's reset, recharge, and reconnect right here on Cup